Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Currency of Anarchy. I'm Josh Davis.
Michael Freeman.
If you'd like to be a part of the discussion during our live taping, please check us out at youtube.com/user/Cur of on Mondays at 9 p.m., 6 p.m. Pacific. And you can see the final product on the air at youtube.com/user/voluntary on Wednesdays at 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific. And please check out our Facebook page at facebook.com/Cur of Anarchy. And if you're here during the live taping, you can post any question or comment to the new thread we've made, or send us a Facebook message directly, and we'll certainly get to it.
Holly Cogburn runs Homebody, a body care, vanity, and cosmetic products company. She contracts using USD, Bitcoin, and barter. She is proud to say that she started the business without the assistance of bank loans. In her words, fuck bank loans and fuck their interest rates. For the most part, fuck banks. She has paid her startup costs out of pocket and has steadily and sustainably grown from there. She believes in a free, fair, and reputation-based market, relying on word of mouth. So please, find Holly at homebodyco.com or facebook.com/homebodyco.
So we have the Roundtable tonight, and we have quite a bit of, or quite a few guests, and two of which are together tonight. I guess we can start with them. Marcel and Rich, good to see you guys again. Hello. Marcel, do you want to introduce yourself?
I am Marcel Fontaine. I'm an activist originally from Connecticut, and I run the Facebook page LGBT for Gun Rights, and I have a wide Facebook following, and yeah, that's about it.
That's cool. Rich?
Well, my name is Rich Paul. I'm a mostly cannabis activist and also jury nullification activist. And I'm originally from Ann Arbor, Michigan, and I moved to New Hampshire as part of the Free State Project.
Yeah, and you're both in Keene right now?
Yes, that's correct.
Nice.
Where exactly in Keene are you, and what other Liberty Media comes out of that building?
Well, I can't say the exact address.
Yeah.
Because it's but we're in an undisclosed location somewhere in the neighborhood of where Free Talk Live is broadcast, and Ladies in Keene comes out of here. Peace News Now comes out of Keene. Puke and the Gang comes out of Keene. There's a lot of shows that come out of Keene, and a whole nother set coming out of Manchester. New Hampshire is pretty much the liberty capital of the world these days.
Exactly.
Or in my humble opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've had Liberty Doll on the show a few times. Yay. Hi, Nikki.
Hi.
You want to introduce yourself again?
Okay. Well, I'm Nikki. I'm in Massachusetts, which is not the liberty capital of the world. It's probably one of the anti-liberty capitals of the world. I run the Liberty Doll Facebook page, the blog, the skeleton YouTube channel that has like 3 videos on it. And I'm a psychotherapist and a writer and all kinds of stuff.
Right on. Luis, what's going on? Good to have you back on.
Thank you. Happy to be here. It's only been 2 weeks.
That's not bad at all. Can you reintroduce yourself, please?
Yes, Luis Fernando. I run Unspeakable Human, North Texas Cup Walk, Cup Logic, Black Markets Are Beautiful, V is for Voluntary. I also am the host of Anarcast Spanish, and I'm a consultant, and we teach basically voluntarism in the corporate world and most of our clients are in the Forbes 100 companies, best companies to work for.
Right on. Yeah, so we have quite the lineup. Yeah, so I think the first thing that we wanted to talk about, Michael and I, is the thing is, I think that there's reason to be hopeful due to education. People are starting new blogs or starting new web shows, and they're coming out of their own boxes, and they're being strong and strong-willed, and instead of keeping all their information to themselves, they're speaking out about it, spreading the message of liberty. But yet, I think that economics is still going to play out, and the dollar is still going to collapse. People are still statist and don't really see that this is going to happen, whether they want it to happen or not, or whether they believe it will not happen or not. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So there's positive and negative, but what's your perspective on this?
Well, that's a pretty thick question.
This is definitely the topic tonight, though.
Pretty loaded. You know, as you know, I'm a huge fan of Doug Casey, and like his message has been talking about for longer than I've been alive is how everything, how the dollar is going to collapse probably since 1982, and it's been gradually happening. So I think that yes, it will happen, and I just see that the message of voluntarism, the message of libertarianism is reaching the mainstream, and yeah, sometimes it's not a good sight, because they tend to mock the message, they tend to mock us, and using slander and all sorts of things. But the point that I'm trying to make is kind of like Mahatma Gandhi said, that first they laugh at you and then they fight you and then you win. So we're kind of in that era, we're in that stage where we need to really get together and try to spread the message. And I think that's pretty interesting because in the work that I do, Monday through Friday, just the idea that corporations, I probably a couple of months ago I went to the Conscious Capitalism CEO Summit, and it was over 200 CEOs, and there was basically what they were saying is, government sucks, they don't work, we need to do something, basically privatize everything. We need to create systems and communities where we are able to bring a lot of ourselves, taking the idea that they need to empower people to be able to do more. So in other words, privatizing the world, which is awesome. So imagine this is happening with the CEO of Chipotle and John Mackey from Whole Foods and some other fancy dudes. So this is already happening at the very high level. And from there, we take, the idea that there's a ton of people blogging, a bunch of people with pages. And so to me, that's really hopeful. So yeah, the dollar's going to collapse. It's collapsing. It's going away. The BRIC nations are trying to do away with the dollar as a currency of trade. So I think that that's actually kind of an exciting time, because we can actually get together and do I think that statism is on its way out. So that's
right.
That's the way I see it.
Yeah, I agree with you. I like it. Nikki, what are your perspectives and thoughts?
Well, it's hard to say and to make a prediction of where I think voluntarism or anarchism and statism are going to go within this next year. But as long as I've been paying attention, at least, I've sort of noticed a trend where a bunch of things go down and everything escalates for a little while, and then it sort of plateaus out and people stop paying attention, and then something else comes up and everybody gets upset about that, and there's talk about, government's doing this wrong or the police are doing that wrong, and then everyone sort of forgets about it again. when I first started getting into the ideas of liberty, it was the NDAA that was signed. All that was going on. There was the controversies about Ron Paul not getting airtime in the debates, and everyone was getting all riled up about it. And then it sort of petered out. And then there was, like the Sandy Hook shooting, Newtown shooting, and then everyone was all upset about gun control. And then that sort of petered out. So I think right now we're definitely in a period of escalation again with everything that's been going on in Ferguson, and then now the cops in New York that are sort of on strike, kind of, and really just showing people that they're not needed. Do I think
Yeah, exactly.
do I think this is the ultimate thing that's going to make people wake up? I don't think so. I think it's statism is far too deep and entrenched, but I'm thinking in particular of I think it was Larkin Bose that posted a graphic the other day where he had asked people about when they had come into voluntarism or anarchism, and he documented the years that everyone answered, and right now is the biggest amount of any time, really. When he showed it on the graph, 2014 had the highest bar for the most people that had found out about voluntarism and anarchism and identified as such. So I think that's really hopeful. I know that I've been telling more people about it, even in my personal life. I've been a little bit more vocal since some family members accidentally stumbled onto my work. So I sort of had to air it out a little bit. But so I've used that to talk about it more in my personal life. I don't use the word anarchy because people get scared by it. I usually say voluntarism. But so I think that there's hope, and I think that we'll definitely take some steps forward this year. I don't know if it will be the year, but yeah.
I do have to mention the part that when Larkin Rose created that graph a few days ago, even he prefaced it with, it's a very rudimentary graph because he only has 5,000 followers or friends or whatever, and only so many can respond to him at once, that kind of thing. So it's got stipulations to that. You know what I'm saying? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I actually didn't even realize that he polled that many people. I just saw that he had said that he had asked friends, so I didn't even know that it was that many people that he had asked.
Probably.
So that's really impressive.
Yeah, but yeah, that's awesome. Marcel, what are your thoughts?
Well, as of the whole entire anarchist type of type of thing going on in the and plus how libertarianism is going to be in 2015. I do think that, especially with the likes of Ferguson and the Eric Garner case and so like that is actually waking a lot more people up to the corruption with policing, and how law enforcement has gone beyond the boundaries of their intended duties to actually technically if you do the Warren versus DC, then basically they don't necessarily have an obligation to protect, but to maintain the protection service. But and it's just with how things are going now, probably I don't necessarily see the complete end of statism there, because there will be more status and so like that, and I think that's primarily due to the public school indoctrination and so like that here and there, and so I'm pretty sure that we'll probably get a lot more libertarians this year, but yeah, that's just basically my opinion.
If you're sleeping in a room with a lot of people, the more people that wake up, the harder it is to stay asleep. And having spent a significant amount of time in jail recently. I've empirically checked that, and it's true. The more people who are awake in the day room, the harder it is to stay asleep. So
Empirical data.
When love gloves go around, there's no staying asleep. I'm sorry.
But so I expect to see continued exponential growth in our ideas, and a lot of that depends on how kind our enemies are. And with the Michael Brown shooting, and even not so much Brown, but Garner really, they've handed us a gold mine because people are waking up to, at least somewhat to the level of violence, and that puts them in a great space to hear the gun in the room argument, that and it should be something that we can bring conservatives and liberals together on.
Yeah.
The Eric Garner, because basically he was killed for engaging in free enterprise.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, exactly.
What are you saying, Michael? Your mic's off.
Yeah, sorry. So the liberals are going to come in on the side of anti-police brutality, civil rights, and the Republicans are going to come in on the side of their fantasy level of what free trade is. They can use the word and toss that around. And maybe sometimes it could even help actual markets. So yeah, it is. It's like a bipartisan issue. I think that the Eric Garner case is cut and dry. It was video recorded, cold-blooded murder. Yeah, it should unite, but then I find that it just turns into a race-baiting issue, just like every other one, and then this whole Sony thing happened, and where did police brutality go? Like, where did the whole torture report go? It's just like old news already, and I don't have faith in the media, but I don't want to take your guys' time.
Yeah, I mean, there are definitely forces trying to keep things quiet, but it gets harder and harder. When your neighbor on both sides hold a new opinion, it's much harder to hold on to your old one.
Yeah, I was even talking to a fellow peer in my school back in Connecticut, and she was actually and she was an African American descent, but she she was saying all this police corruption and stuff like that. Like she spotted my cop block badge on my bag, and that developed a conversation saying of anti-police and stuff like that, and anti-police brutality and stuff. And I even showed her maybe you should read the Most Dangerous Superstition by Larkin Rose, and you should read the book by Davy Barker, Authoritarian Sociopathy. I recommended those books, and hopefully she takes advantage of those and actually gets those types of literature to her and try to make it understand that the root causes of this is basically through the means of obeying authority and so like that, and she was actually even familiar with the Stanford prison experiment, where basically they experimented with in a basement of a university. I forgot the name of it though. But
I've actually been to make a video about that experiment. That reminded me, so thank you.
Yeah, she was even familiar with that, and that was actually a really good starting point. And I even even recommended Henry David Thoreau's Civil Disobedience to her, and hopefully that she takes advantage of those sources.
Right.
What I have to say is really great is that even though the mainstream media and most people are making these police brutality cases into a race issue, there are some people that are sort of like trickling in and seeing the underlying issues. There was a very, 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 very liberal person on my Facebook the other day that was complaining about race issues, and I was starting to get into the conversation, and then someone actually commented, and they're like, look, I just read this article, and there was this guy, Kelly Thomas, that was killed by police, and he was this homeless guy with mental health issues, and so they actually started researching and found other cases. So for them, at least, it did become an issue of, the police versus the people, and not just the police versus black people, which I thought was really amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and at the same time, I don't try and say that there are no racist cops in America, because God knows there are a lot of racist cops.
There definitely are.
I know, right?
And but it does go both ways. Just like people get pulled over for driving while black in a white neighborhood, people also get pulled over for driving while white in a black neighborhood. And being a retired drug dealer,
I know that none of you guys know Rhode Island very well. I recently lived in Oneyville, Rhode Island, which is like arguably the most ghetto spot in Rhode Island. And I really lived there because it was close to the VA, but that's irrelevant. And I was stopped, coerced all the time because they thought that I was there trying to score drugs, because, I'm a white kid who sometimes wears collars on my shirt, and I don't talk with a ghetto drawl, right? And I was the victim of the exact same type of racial profiling, but on the opposite, side of the spectrum. And I've dealt with that for 4 years now.
Yeah. My fiance actually grew up in Brockton, which is probably the most ghetto place in Massachusetts aside from Lynn. It's sort of like a third world country, and he has so many stories of times that he got pulled over, and immediately the first thing the cops did was ask him what he was doing there and if he was buying drugs.
Is Pat white? He does look kind of
ambiguous.
Olive Italian, maybe.
He is Italian, actually, though he's mostly Irish.
Really?
Yes. We were actually at this Chinese restaurant once, and the waitress asked us if he was, she goes, "You meeks? You meeks?" And then she pointed at her eyes. It was pretty amazing. So he's pretty ambiguous.
I want to move on to the subject of the marathon bombing, because that was almost 2 years at this point, and they're having this guy on trial, Tsarnaev. So this is big in Boston, because Boston, we were all shut down, in that general area, Boston, Somerville, Cambridge. They were shut down for like a day and a half, and so everybody wanted to be on the side of the cops. Everybody was like, yeah, I'll gladly shut myself in if you go find that bomber who is just one person. And, well, potentially two people. But, like the whole thing was set up, in my opinion. Never mind getting into the conspiracy theories, which is why we should have had Chris Cantwell on here. But I think that, the whole thing was just kind of a setup so that the governor could take control of that area and have people submit. And now we're on to a year, almost 2 years later, and people are getting ripshit at cops. I love it. So people flip-flop, and maybe they see things neutrally. I want to give them the benefit of the doubt, but at the same time, in the end, why would you submit to not going outside of your own home, even 2 steps apparently? You couldn't be on the street unless you had some reason. Or you're going to Dunkin' Donuts or something. No joke either.
No, I know.
So the funny thing is, it's not funny. You know what I'm saying? But you know what I'm saying. Michael, I kind of want to go to you. What do you think about all of that?
I mean, I'm not sure exactly what you're asking. Like,
I'm asking, do people flip flop, or do people think neutrally, or are they just status, or what?
people, I mean, everybody flip flops. I flip flop. We all practice logical fallacies, whether we try to or not. I was going through this yesterday with something as silly as comic books. Like, I read this comic book yesterday about Superman. It's called, like, Superman Red Sun. And I'm a Marvel guy, and that's totally the opposite of what I do. I don't do DC comics, and it's like this cognitive dissonance fallacy of it is. No, it really is. It's like borders or patriotism or pack mentality. Like, I do Marvel rather than DC because I picked that team, right? Like I didn't build that. And
Well, I guess that's different though, because isn't the quality of that comic just? Do you like Marvel in general compared to DC, or are you just seriously a fanboy of Marvel for no reason?
Are we really going to do comic book philosophy?
Well,
I love it. Yes, absolutely. Rich Top, I hope you're watching right now. He's going to be so proud. He's convincing me into DC. Look, I've been into Marvel comic books for about 20 years now, man. And I have a lot of them. And there's my friend Rich, who works at Comic-Cons, and I think he's watching the show right now. He's like an anarchist, but he doesn't do philosophy, and he just doesn't care very much. I am biased against DC comic books because when I was a kid, just like you guys with your sports teams or whatever, I picked my borders, right? And I read this comic book the other night, and I just tried to go into it with an open mind, just like I do when I read something like Bakunin or the Communist Manifesto or whatever it is. I just went into it with an open mind, and it was a cool spin on a boring story, in my opinion, and I thoroughly enjoyed it, And I know you guys think that's boring. I see Marcel staring at his phone, but I do comic books pretty hardcore, and this was a big deal for me, and I think that has to do with these same ideas of anarchy, and like, if you can't have an open mind, if you think that people are going to agree with you, you're going to have a really bad time once free society hits, I think. We're not all going to agree on economics. We're not all going to agree on philosophy or politics or apolitics or comic books or freaking music. It doesn't really matter. And that's why I enjoy it so much, because I'm free to like my comics. I'm free to like my freedom. I'm free to like my Miller High Life and cannabis tea and stuff, right?
Yeah.
I know I just ranted and rambled right there, but that's. I think it was beautiful. So.
Nikki, what do you say?
Well, so what I say is, I mean, if it was set up, then they picked the perfect place to do it, because it's Boston. It's like the liberal capital of the world. I mean, just Cambridge alone is one of the most densely populated places in the entire world, and it is full of liberals. It is the People's Republic of Cambridge. So I think that using the people of Cambridge and Boston as a sort of case study on people flip-flopping or how they feel about the police is in a way not really fair, because, like I said, it's the liberal capital of the world. I mean, you look at, there's practically a college on every corner next to the Dunkin' Donuts that's also on every corner, and all they spew is liberal bullshit, really. I mean, I've been to, 4 colleges with all my different degrees and stuff, and each one was exactly the same. No matter what your major is, you're mandated to take multicultural classes and diversity classes and world classes,
Women's studies.
feminism classes, yes, women's studies, all of that stuff. So these people, they're sort of held by the hand the whole way and taught what to think. I mean, growing up, I guess my dad is sort of a Republican, but I never knew that because Republicans were evil and everything was liberal or bust. There was no other option. So,
Republicans are kind of evil, though. Yeah.
well, they are, but I tend to like them a little bit better than Democrats because they usually like guns. So,
Yeah, but they like bombs.
well, yes, they also like bombs, and that's really unfortunate, but
Yeah.
I feel like they're a little easier to convert. But, oh goodness, I forgot where I was going with that. Okay, so we're in these I don't know if it's the same at colleges everywhere, but in places like Massachusetts, we are not taught critical thinking. We are taught that these are the rules, and this is what you follow, and that's how you get through life. So it seems natural that when all that stuff went down in Boston, everyone just sort of bowed down and clapped their hands and, you know, did the hokey pokey and went along with it.
Yeah, it was absolutely sick.
I'm going to cut in. I've been wanting to. I've never been able to find the words for this, but I've been trying to directly ask you this question for getting on a year now. How do you, with your licensing and your legal hoops that your career involves, and like I understand, I know that you're a good person, and I'm sure that you help people on a regular basis. If you have to jump through legal hoops to do that,
Right.
Cheers, right? But how do you relate that to market anarchism? Like, how do you freedom through your job?
Well, as of right now, I'm actually in a group private practice. So we do take health insurances, but we also offer cash-only services. We don't do barter because that's actually, again,
You know what I'm going to ask next. Do you accept Bitcoin? Come on.
Bitcoin. I personally would. I'm not the owner of the practice, so I cannot make that decision because I do have to pay them rent. And they pretty much just go through insurances and cash only. If it was my own private practice, I would absolutely take Bitcoin or silver or gold, though I would never charge enough that someone could hand me a gold coin.
In your market, you know, could you legally accept Bitcoin for a practice like that that's so heavily regulated?
Yes, you could, because you are allowed to set up a cash-only practice. The issue with that is just you have to be really well known to be able to do it because you have to be able to get clients that would pay the price. But so for an example, the average cost of a session would be $125, and that is just because if we ask that, insurances will give us like 60 or 70.
Yeah.
But we do offer discounted rates for people that have high deductibles or that don't have insurance.
Hey, this is way off topic. I was like only curious for me. You know, I'm sorry, but we should.
We should.
We'll take it offline.
But yeah, so I don't remember what we were saying before, but definitely they are not given critical thinking skills in Massachusetts. And the funny thing is so when they were out searching for this guy, I was actually driving around Cambridge and Watertown not knowing what was going on, and I was like, why is there all this traffic? Why is everyone going in this one direction? And we were in the car, and my mom called me and asked me if I was okay. And I was like, why would I not be okay? And she's like, oh, well, you know, Boston is on lockdown, and no one is outside. And I was like, oh, well, I'm just driving in the car right now. And we were like 2 streets away from where it happened and where they found him. So, yeah, we were being anarchists without even knowing it, and somehow didn't get caught.
I applaud you. That's awesome. Yeah, cheers. There we go, Michael.
My biggest impression of the Boston bombing is it was the day before my felony trial, and they actually had an FBI agent the day after the Boston bombing up for testifying against me instead of investigating the damn bombing. And
just for our audience, Rich, you know, Josh and I, and I'm sure Marcel are familiar with your works. But why is this person messing with you again? This FBI agent?
for selling cannabis.
Okay.
Wow.
So
You gotta be kidding.
and this was a guy from the Joint Terrorism Task Force.
Oh, right.
Apparently, he thought selling joints was joint terrorism.
I'm not going to get into definitives here, but I would just like to say that for the record, we here at the Currency of Anarchy promote free trade in all shapes and forms.
Agreed.
And, one thing that I did want to get out on this is between Stacy Litz in Kansas, I think, who was arrested by FBI and eventually turned, and me, I've just heard about another case in Michigan where an activist was targeted by the FBI for actually a marijuana grower was legal one was convinced to bend the rules for a patient by an FBI snitch.
Aren't you from
so be
Michigan,
careful in your personal life, because there may be people targeting you, and I'm saying that to everybody on the show. Just so you know, if you're an activist, the FBI may be targeting you. Be careful.
There's a good book that you boys down in Keene promote by Claire Wolfe, I believe, called Rats. That's about narcs, agents provocateur, similar infestations. You guys can look it up, check it out online. It's kind of about how activists can deal with threats, you know, secret threats by the state.
Mm-hmm. Sounds like a good book.
Yeah. Marcel, anything?
For as the Boston bombing goes, I mean, like I was like, you know, in college around then and so like that, and like one of my friends he was a big Marxist and so like that, so he was going around with a poll, going around with like, you know, seeing like just like, you know, a random like asking poll. And a lot of people thought it was like, you know, right-wing extremism and so like that. And he even like, you know, said to me that that if the Boston bombers did not get their rights read, then they would basically get off scot-free. And yeah, like what actually like, you know, went on through the Boston bombing with the whole entire like, you know, search and seizure of trying to find that individual. Yeah, that was that was way over the top. I mean, like it was just, you know, it was just like but when it comes to like the flip flopping, I'm not too sure of what the people in Boston actually believe in now. But yeah, like. Some people like, you know, some people still hold the belief that they would probably have been justified for like, you know, going into other people's houses because this person with a crock pot was on the loose. But yeah,
no, home cooked food.
Yeah. But yeah, that's it was just ridiculous.
Yeah.
Yeah. The thing is, I remember that day that happened. I was at work, and I was working at a retail store at the time.
Were you in Massachusetts when this happened?
Oh yeah, I was in
nice.
Salem.
Well,
Salem,
I guess
Mass.
not nice, but.
Right, I was like, what is that, 4 or 5 towns north? Just north of Lynn, by the way.
Lynn, city of sin.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I just remember all of that happening, and they were saying, hey, we're going to close down all that surrounding area. And I had a few friends, for example, in Watertown, and they were like, oh, you know, don't get mad at them. And I remember one of my friends was one of the police officers that was doing one of the raids or raiding, and come to find out later, his brother doesn't even approve of that. I just think that it's that personal. Like a lot of us had friends or relatives in the 9/11 thing as well, and so people get personal with it. And I try to, keep my emotions out of it to think, hey, what's going to happen down the road? What's the long-term thing that's going to happen as opposed to what's right now? What do you want to happen? You know what I mean?
I'm not very good at this yet, but I very much try to be a creature of logic rather than emotion.
Right.
And I slip up sometimes, like I just mentioned in my pointless rant about comic books a few minutes ago that made no sense whatsoever. I suffer cognitive dissonance sometimes, and I use fallacies sometimes, and I get emotional sometimes, right? We all do, and if I think that if you say you are solely a creature of logic, that you are a liar.
Right.
But when it really comes to the Boston Marathon for me, I was in Rhode Island at the time. I was 2 hours away, and I was not aware of that until maybe 2 weeks later, I believe. And
what?
When I heard about it, I thought it was some big atrocity and some I don't even own a TV. I do not mainstream media, man. I don't. So at the time, I thought all kinds of terrible things. I probably might have even loosely believed the narrative, which I do not anymore. But I don't have a stance. I have no idea what happened. Like, in hindsight, that's just typical government shenanigans. I'm not surprised. I'm not impressed. I'm not let down. That's just what the state does. Like, they use guns and take over your area and you steal or utilize your property or seize your property. That's what they do. I'm not surprised or slighted in the least by this. This is how the state operates.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
One of the movement. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
One of the weird moments that I had, speaking of things being personal, I think I was at the gym actually, and my gym's a terrible place because it's filled with TVs that play nothing but soap operas and liberal news stations. And, I've got my headphones in, I'm not really paying attention, and I look up on the TV, and there's a picture of the apartment building next door to where I lived when I lived in Quincy, and there's these headlines about it being raided in connection to the Boston bombing. And I forget if it was his brother or their friend or whatever, but the FBI showed up and raided the apartment building next to mine. I hadn't lived there for a few months. Actually maybe even like a year, but it was really bizarre because I looked up and I'm like, why is this on the TV? And then I read the little scrolling thing underneath and I was like, oh, so you can't live in this area and not know someone who was involved somehow. It seems like everyone was involved, or their friend was involved, or their neighbor was involved.
Yeah.
And yet everyone thinks that what happened is okay.
Right.
I drove through Massachusetts yesterday with my anarchist friend Adam, and we were only in Seekonk, so we were in Massachusetts for about 11 minutes, just to come back down here to Bristol, and we were breaking even between Rhode Island and Massachusetts, and Rhode Island is one of the bluer states, right? Not compared to Mass so much, but we had. In between Rhode Island and Massachusetts, we had at least 4 illegal things in the car, and some of them were felony level, And this is just driving through a geographical location. Like, why does morality change from this border to this border?
Right.
It's a good question.
It doesn't.
It doesn't. That's exactly right.
Right. Yeah, I think I'll take a minute just to go over the currency, if you don't mind. The last time we did the show, it was the 29th. Today is January 5th. Took these prices actually during the taping at 9:31. So silver was $15.86. Tonight it's 16.18. So that's a change of 32 cents, which is a 2% change. Gold was 11.8575. Tonight it's 12.0421. That's a $18.46 change, 1.6%. And Bitcoin was 313.38. Tonight it's 273.06. So that's down $40.32. That's 12.9%. That seems a little steep percentage-wise, but yeah. So that's the currency or the hard money, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, I honestly just want to keep on going with what we've been talking about, though, and I kind of want to switch it up a little bit. I want to talk about the books that got me into liberty, or Minarchy, and then I went to Anarchy. But what took me to Minarchy was Ron Paul.
Just for our newer guests and some of the newer viewers who might not know this, the currency of anarchy was initially called the currency of democracy.
Right.
Could you explain that to us for the record?
Yeah, let's go over the history of that. So the currency of democracy was a project that I started after I, became politically aware, as it were. That was in 2008, after Obama and McCain had their debacle with the banks. The banks swayed them to vote for the bailouts, and they were telling everybody that they were going to vote against the bailouts, but both of them voted for it. So that broke me out of that paradigm of the left and right, the crap, the one-party system, as it were. And so eventually I came upon Ron Paul and Libertarian Party stuff, so Minarchy, and that's when I started the currency of democracy based on Thomas Jefferson's quote, "Information is the currency of democracy." So I did that for about 4 or 5 years in Danvers. That was at DCAT. It's a public access station, and eventually during that time I came upon anarchism, so actual liberty, and yeah, eventually, so I ran across Stefan Molyneux, and he basically got me into actual anarchism. Larkin Rose was in the mix a little bit, a few other people, but basically I did some reading and a lot of that show, and you see my progression and get me out of that belief system. So I turned the show into a web show. This is the currency of anarchy now. So that's the history of the show. I did only 2 or 3 shows by myself, and then I had a host prior to Michael. Michael came upon the show about 3 or 4 months ago. That's about right. So yeah, that's that. The first couple books that got me into Minarchy and liberty, as a general concept, was Ron Paul's book Liberty Defined, and Judge Napolitano's book, It's Dangerous to Be Right When the Government is Wrong. I'm not sure if you've heard of these books, but these are just general outlines. Actually, Judge Napolitano's book, he kind of bullet points all of the ways that the Constitution is violated, and it's like, okay, yeah, we should stick to the Constitution. And then you start thinking outside the box, and hey, why would the government actually, enforce a law upon itself? That just doesn't make much sense. So that's anarchism. And for the moral argument, I got into UPB, Universally Preferable Behavior by Stefan Molyneux. So that's he tries to set up the moral argument for objective morality, and it's a good start, but it's not the whole thing, and he's not actually making the moral argument. He's just thinking logically about it. So that was my take. This is how, for the most part, I got into libertarian thought in general. But I want to know more about you guys. I know Luis himself has been into anarchism, and I believe it was through your family. Is that correct?
Well, yes and no. My parents were, they tried to raise me, like probably most people, do no harm but take no shit kind of thing. But it was interesting because I think that the very first person that I saw talking about this kind of stuff was Tom Woods on YouTube. And from then on, I devoured everything, and the rabbit trail went on from Ron Paul and Lou Rockwell's, Molyneux as well, and then Jeffrey Tucker, Jeff Berwick, Doug Casey. So, I've read a few books, but I've devoured all the YouTubes. And my commute to work is about an hour to an hour and a half. So, I will just put my headphones on and put my iPhone and just listen to the whole thing, for my whole commute, and just listen to all that stuff. And I had the time, so it was a little bit hard to read. Unless I was, pooping at 6 in the morning, I really didn't have a lot of time to do the reading. So, my iPhone and YouTube were basically my books at the time. So that's how everything started, and partially because, like I was telling you guys a couple weeks ago, I started working as a social worker / translator, and I just wanted to, change the world and help the poor and all this and that. But then I just saw how, because of the government grants, we were really not helping people. We were just disempowering them. Mm. So that kind of helped me wake up a little bit in that realm. And from then, I somehow got dragged into teaching plans. So, after a bunch of San Pedro and ayahuasca, I was able to see all this from an introspective perspective that helped me understand this. Basically, like every shamanic session was like a whole freaking master's course on economics or politics. So it was pretty heavy duty stuff. And like after several experiences of death and rebirth, and like just seeing how the whole system works, it just clicked in my head. And like, basically, like one of my latest ayahuasca ceremonies, she said, you need to empower others, and you cannot like really go super far without empowering people. So it helped me see that, yeah, I had really great coaching growing up, but I couldn't go farther if I didn't support others. So from there is when I saw the idea, or more the vision, that we're all interconnected. So, and how this government idea is more like an exoskeleton that prevents us from growing. So we need to shed that exoskeleton to be able to allow spontaneous order from happening. To happen. So.
I think if teaching yourself, or if you teach others, you're reinforcing what you already know within yourself. It kind of helps. Like it strengthens your point. Just to put it across, I used to listen to the Mises audio daily, like for like a year or two, like on end. Like whatever was on their RSS feed, I would just listen to it. Do you know what I'm talking about? Mises.org. They have contributors, and they have people reading different articles, just reading it, and they create a MP3 that you can download and just listen to it every day, almost every day. Mm-hmm. So
that's pretty.
Anyway, Nikki, what do you have to present to us?
I guess I'm sort of a bad anarchist because I haven't really read a whole lot.
That's fair. That's fair.
I can't say that I arrived here by myself because that's not what happened. Really, what happened was my fiance, who I had just started dating at the time, was reading Ron Paul's book. And then he told me all about Ron Paul's book. And then he'd be working in his office, and I'd walk in, and he'd be listening to The Law, the audiobook. So I would sit in there and listen to it, even though I missed the first like 5 or 10 minutes. I did read Larkin Rose's The Iron Web, and the questions that he asked in that book and how he pointed out government and how it works and the things that government does, and the transformation of the characters in that book is actually what clicked for me and made me say, oh, you know, maybe anarchy and voluntarism is really the way to go. And then once I hit that point, I've read a lot of Rothbard, his essays, and the transcripts, of his lectures. Usually what would happen is someone would say, oh, well, in anarchy, how will you solve this problem or solve that problem? Because we're expected to suddenly solve all of the world's problems, even though government doesn't solve any. So I would like, well, I bet Rothbard has an answer for that. And so I would Google and usually end up on the Mises website, I think, or like Lou Rockwell or wherever else, and I would read a transcript of one of his lectures, and I'd be like, well, if you look at this paragraph, particularly I reference him a lot when I'm talking about courts and arbitration and how anarchy isn't going to be just this Wild West, everybody blowing each other's heads off because someone stole something. So I do reference Rothbard a lot. I look to him mostly, I think. And I did download a few audiobooks. Hazlitt's Economics in One Lesson. Admittedly, I never finished it. But I got most of the way through. And also Rothbard's The Case Against the Fed. I believe that was the title. I downloaded that as well when I wanted to learn more about economics. So mostly I would say that philosophically and literature-wise, I'm mostly a Rothbard and Larkin Rose person. I never really could get into Molyneux, I think mostly because his videos are all like an hour long. And I'm always like, okay, I'm going to do Molyneux today. And I go and hit play, and it sort of meanders on, and then 10 minutes, I'm like, you know what, that's enough. I think I get it.
Yeah. So. And it's the same image over and over again, his bald head.
Yes, and he sort of makes this weird face when he like looks at the camera, and he's so dramatic. I did watch his video about like a spanking study. I did watch that one because I think it was like 10 minutes, and there is one video that uses like Minecraft imagery to talk about how the government just keeps adding more solutions that don't actually fix the problem. Yeah. And it talked about like Galileo and stuff. I did watch that one because his face wasn't on it, and there were graphics. So yeah, I guess I'm a bad anarchist because I don't really follow anyone or anything.
That's all good. As an anarchist, you shouldn't follow anybody. You just
I would say that probably makes you a good anarchist.
So Marcel, Rich?
I'd say that my first introduction into liberty first was probably I went through the conspiracy theorist phase and saw that here and there. Like I listened to Alex Jones, and I basically got into like the conspiracy theories. and then and that was just for a little bit. And once I got to Ron Paul and so with that, that actually got me onto more of like and plus what actually got me straight onto like free market economics was through Peter Schiff. I mean I saw that he like went down to Occupy Wall Street, and I was an Occupy Wall Street supporter at the time, and I saw that he was representing the 1%. So I said, maybe I should like check this video out just to open my mind a little bit. And then I saw his arguments, and he was straight on, and I liked it about that. So I got onto that. And then once the 2012 elections came, and I went, and then I saw that Ron Paul didn't won the nomination at the RNC, so I went straight into Gary Johnson, and then Gary Johnson didn't win, and I was losing faith with the system. And then basically I saw Adam Kokesh's videos of voluntarism and anarcho-capitalism, and I was a little curious about it. So I went down to Anarchy NYC down in 2013, ironically on 420, and basically I saw Adam Kokesh. I've actually even met Stefan Molyneux. And I met Larkin Rose for the first time. I did not know who he was then, but once I actually got his books, that is when I actually really discovered him. And then basically, I saw numerous of I even met Christopher Cantwell for the first time there too. That was amazing too. And then that basically sealed the deal right there. I was an anarchist right then and there. That just basically sealed the deal.
Right on. Yeah, Rich.
Well, let's see. I'm old, so there. In 1992, I voted for Bill Clinton. And before that, there were times in my life when I would have self-identified as a socialist. I was so disgusted with Clinton that in 1996 I voted for Harry Brown, even though I wasn't yet a believer in free market economics. I was disgusted enough with the government, with what the government was doing, that my reaction was kind of, oh God, even no government at all would be better than the government we have, because at least it wouldn't do any harm.
Right.
And so I guess from that thought on, you could say that I was an anarchist, but my intellectual journey was a lot longer than that. Then I started arguing economics with libertarians, trying to turn them into libertarian socialists of some sort. And they kept quoting The Wealth of Nations by Adam Smith at me. And the quotations were very difficult to argue with, and they were also really beautifully written. So I said, okay, I'm going to read this damn book and debunk it. So my first introduction to economics was The Wealth of Nations, and the language was good for me because I had previously read all the works of Shakespeare, so I had no problem with the period language, and also I'd read a lot of the Founding Fathers stuff. So anyway, I read that, and that turned me 180 degrees on the issue of free market economics. By the time I tried to debunk it, and it just debunked me. And so then I had been introduced to Ayn Rand, but I reread some Ayn Rand in the view of my new knowledge of how market economies work, and I actually understood Atlas Shrugged much better. So I went through some of that, and then I went through my kind of objectivist phase where I ran around saying mean things about poor people because I blamed them, until I realized that they were the people with absolutely the least power in the fucking system. system. They were exactly the last people who should ever be blamed for the fact. You know,
Josh, we need to make
crippled by the fucking system, and now it's giving them a crutch, and the Republicans begrudge them that, and it's like, well, no, it's just like, let's just not make any more people who can't cope with life. You know, let's make people who can cope with life, and that'll be better, you know. But so anyway, I went through my angry objectivist phase. And then during the time I had a wife die of cancer without being able to use medical marijuana, and I was very angry at I'm not going to get into her medical shit, but there were many ways that the state intervened in her medical care that I believed contributed to her death, including absolutely refusing to allow her to use an experimental drug. So at that point, I was kind of getting into militia territory, and I was angry to the point where I actually considered doing something. You know, I don't know what. I didn't get that far. But after she died, I kind of wanted to go out in a blaze of glory for a little while. Then that kind of passed when I was introduced to Ron Paul in 2008. And all of a sudden, here's this guy who's saying the right things and people are actually listening. Yeah. And it was like, holy shit, maybe there's hope. You know, maybe let's see where we can go with this. So I shifted kind of from LP to the doctor cured me to some extent, and so I got into the Ron Paul movement, and through that met back up with economics because I'd read Friedman. But then I started reading Austrian economics because of Ron Paul, and that kind of turned me from a monetarist into an Austrian. I've been all over the place, you know. I think I'm approaching the truth, but I'm way too old to think I have it. And then moving to New Hampshire and actually living amongst agorists was the thing that finally moved me all the way to anarchy. That and getting arrested and seeing the system from the inside as an activist. Because when I started the 420 rally, I still wasn't an anarchist. I was just a really weird,
half liberal.
Logged under the term radical centrist because it's like on every given issue, I was either way to the right of the Democrats, or way to the right of the Republicans, or I was way to the left of the Democrats. You know? But that's kind of so I don't know. I think that's kind of a cute idea. Yeah. Anyway. Yeah. But that's kind of my journey in a nutshell. I'm now pretty much a confirmed agorist / anarcho-capitalist because, you know, agorism is a transitional philosophy, but where you're going is anarcho-capitalism once the state is gone. Yeah. For all intents and purposes, they're indistinguishable in practice. But at the same time, I recognize that even if the state were going to collapse tomorrow, okay, if the state just disappeared, somebody pushed the magic go away state button and the whole thing disappeared, well, the reality is, while 99% of your neighbors want a state, you are going to have a state. And if you try to stop them from establishing that state, they will kill you, and then they will establish their state. And
so we have to run away.
Out of Massachusetts.
Like at least 50% anarchists, the general population, in order to sustain an anarchist society that was not at perpetual war with itself. So while I'm an anarchist, I will do things like go out and try to minimize the state as much as I can through in-system activism and through civil disobedience and through any other tactic that crosses my mind that I think might somehow, by some stretch of the imagination, work. Because, I'll try anything if I think it'll work.
Yeah.
But I recognize that the state's going to be with us probably for a long time, and that we have to, as much as possible, keep it out of our lives while it exists. So I applaud organizations like the ACLU still for at least keeping the government enough off our backs that we're not all dead.
Right.
So I guess.
So I guess I'm just going to finish this segment up real quick because we're way over. And I went from young punk rock anarchist who had no idea what the word meant to joining the military, nationalist, globalist, really, imperialist. And then I went to conspiracy theories, and then Rand Paul, and then Ron Paul, and then Mises, and then Hayek, and then Rothbard, and then black flags all over the place. The literature that really sparked my interest at first was The Most Dangerous Superstition by Larkin Rose. I think that's one of the best novels, the best pieces of writing that I've ever seen in my life. It's beautifully done, really, really quick, really easy, and straight to the point. I would bring up I would bring up Anatomy of the State by Murray Rothbard, and I would probably bring up Freedom by Adam Kokesh is a pretty good one, or The Theory of Money and Credit by Ludwig von Mises.
Oh, yeah.
Mises is really, really good. And these are all really easy books to read, really short, really straight to the point. If you want to give this to some of your friends who are starting to consider these ideas, they're really good tools. But we really got to cut this over, so that's all I wanted to say.
Yeah, sounds good. Let's give like a good 30 seconds for everybody. Just your most important websites or whatever you want to go to. Marcel, what do you want to say? 30 seconds.
If you want to see what I'm about, just follow my Facebook page, LGBT for Gun Rights, or if you want to follow my personal Facebook page, you can. I believe that there was some people deleted, so if you want to add me, then that's then that's your volition. But if you want to follow me, then so be it.
Yeah, Rich.
Let's see. Well, my up-and-coming thing is I'm going to be executive director of the New Hampshire Jury Association, and that's nhjury.com. We do jury nullification, and we're also going to work on expanding the right to jury trial. And so check out nhjury.com, and there will be big changes there soon.
You guys aren't going to plug Free Keen or any of those organizations while you're sitting in the KAC?
I will do that. I'm sorry. Yeah. You're absolutely right. The other thing is, as always, it's kind of woven into the fabric of my life that the Free State Project, if you're not in New Hampshire, check out New Hampshire. Come out to Liberty Forum.
Yeah.
Come out to Pork Fest. You'll love it here.
Or even just come here and just see the activism that's going on, and seeing and even visit the CAC if you want. Yeah.
Yeah. If you're expecting the shit to hit the fan, it's some comfort to be surrounded by well-armed and like-minded individuals. And there are places in New Hampshire where I can go and have that, and that's a beautiful thing.
You can check out my website at thelibertydoll.com, or you can find me on Facebook as The Liberty Doll. I have a Twitter and a YouTube and some other stuff, but I don't really use it all that often. I'm hoping to make some more videos soon. But yes, definitely thelibertydoll.com and facebook.com/thelibertydoll.
Right.
So 30 seconds. Just please subscribe to Emancipated Human on YouTube. We have an Emancipated Human on Facebook and emancipatedhuman.com. There's a ton of stuff that we do. It's not just liberty stuff. I mean, it has to do with liberty, but the whole idea is try to feature things, more applicable examples instead of a bunch of theories. So look us up, and I really appreciate you guys for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, Michael, who do we have next week? We've got Lance Davis.
Lance Davis comes on next week. In October in 2014, him and his wife Susie and their children's house was more or less raided. The police came there without a warrant and walked into their house, more or less bullied their way through the house, scared the children into the corner, and they were there on an anonymous tip that there was a wanted felon in the house who my friend Lance had never heard of. So recently he was plugged on copblock.com, or I'm sorry, copblock.org. You might know it on Facebook, or from the Keen Activist Center, as a matter of fact. And he was plugged on there, and it, did the viral thing. So, and even if it didn't, I think that's just a good topic. It's a good thing to talk about. He was a direct victim of police brutality.
Right. Yeah, that's going to be pretty intense, and that's going to be next Monday, which is January 12th at 9:00 p.m. Eastern. That will be 6 p.m. Pacific. This show right here should be up on Wednesday, the 7th, and that'll be at 3 p.m. on Voluntary Virtues, youtube.com/user/voluntary virtues. And we should be getting, we do have podcasts being created as we speak, and I got my laptop back, so I will be coding the website. I've got a lot of the back-end stuff up or ready, so I'm just trying to get everything combined and coordinated and designed, the graphic nature of it. So that will be coming up pretty soon. So yeah, just stick around. We're growing, and I'm very appreciative of you all watching, and I know Michael is as well. So yeah, stick around and take care, everybody. We'll see you next time.